King of Podcasts proudly presents The Broadcasters Podcast. A weekly media commentary talking about traditional and digital media headlines and talking to the content creators out front and behind the scenes. Here is the King of Podcasts.
This is episode 147 of the Broadcasters Podcast. Thanks for being here. I am King of Podcasts. Tonight on the program, we talk about big tech and how free expression was always supposed to be a part of the business plan. And we also go through a story that I found about how the media industry is creating an offer you can't refuse. And also tonight, I go ahead and conclude a 3-part interview that I have been featuring here on the program with Muyinza Kasirye. And again, he's a black media producer, artist, entrepreneur, and owner of APRT Media. So we'll talk more in depth onto the executive side of diversity, equity, and inclusion in media and what's being done now. We're going to go ahead and talk all about that a little bit later on as we conclude my interview with him. A great conversation I had with him here on the program. I'll have that all set for all of you to go ahead and check out coming up. So I'm sure some of you are asking, what is the next interview going to be coming up here on the program? Well, I'm looking at what I have. Again, I have several interviews ready to go ahead and put out and join in. Really, one of the red carpet reporters, prominent red carpet reporters in New York City, Lauren Collin, I have as an interview set to go and go. Warren Cohen, who's with Herald PR, I have also set to go. Jimmy Rodriguez with J. Rod Concerts, the podcast series. I have him ready to go. Stephanie Andujar. And I also have Sophie Bowman, who you just recorded earlier this week. So I have those interviews all set to go. I'm going to do them in order as I recorded them. So coming up next will be Lauren Collin, who, just to give you the background on Lauren, she is an entertainment reporter, the Red Carpet Rendezvous podcast. It's a weekly podcast for all things entertainment, film, television, and Broadway. And I have a program, a couple of episodes with her to be featured. I'm going to do that interview in 2 parts, about a good 50-minute interview I did with her. I'll go ahead and feature that coming up next week here on the program. That's what's coming up. But again, I have other people that are coming up on board, and I'll be looking at some other podcasts to put together as we get towards the end of the year. But like I said, with what I have so far, I will be taking us into next year with what we have. So we've got a lot of good content to go and get through, and a few more names I want to go and get on and bring on board. We'll take care of that very soon here on the program. Meantime, I don't want to talk about the election. Everybody else can talk about the election. And I'm sure anybody and everybody would be asking themselves the question, and this is me being apolitical. I do not want to put any kind of idea or mindset as to what my thoughts were on the election of who should win or not. My point is we should never have a contested election. And the other thing is that, for us not to have free and fair elections that cannot be done on election night, I don't know. COVID, of course, played a factor, and so the perfect storm came into play, and here we are. I don't like it, but it is where we are, and it sucks. But what is more important that I'm reading about is censorship. Regardless if you like it or not, who they are censoring, you can, be to your own device as to who you like being censored and who you don't like being censored. But I'm still under the idea that, if one side gets censored, eventually the other side gets censored as well. The thing is, when you let it happen, then it happens all across the board. At what point do you decide to censor creativity, information, whether you like it or not? There are certain things to be censored. Certain things the First Amendment should be protecting. We should not be glorifying violence or hate speech or anything like that. But significant hate speech. I mean, what's being interpreted as hate speech, what's being interpreted as other things is open to interpretation. This is where the FCC next to you needs to go and intervene and clarify for the media. And this is where I think the Section 230 argument is good, because we do need to identify what kind of content should be unacceptable across all media platforms, like just online. It shouldn't be that many things, but there are a couple of things that should be noticed, that should be, subject to prosecution, subject to arrest, piracy should be an issue. There's a lot of things like that we can look at. And that's one of the things I think is important. But free expression, are we still getting that? And here's the thing. I try my best to go ahead and go to reading stories from people that are actually out there and are doing the right thing, okay? My thing is, one of the things, if you notice on my program, is that I do like going to certain websites that are trying to, be as objective as they possibly can when it comes to journalism, when it comes to other things. Now, here's the thing. If you look at the way that the Columbia Journalism Review is brought together, if you look at the media bias that's put out by the CJR.org, it is considered center. They take community feedback, independent research. That's what it is. And that's what I determine them to be. And when there are other fact checkers out there, they also consider that Columbia Journalism Review is left center. So it's a good place for me to go to talk about what's going on. That's why I do what I do here. And I think it's something where it's not a bad idea to have this story out there for people to go ahead and, learn. Some of the stories I take from there that I learned about when it comes to journalism and other things. Because I think it gives me some of the best out there. See, because in the news media, we do need to talk about that because there are those that are content creators that want to create content for blogs or journalists, or they want to create, informational content. Whether it be political, whether it be news, whether it just be something else. But content doesn't need to be just entertainment as well. Where media has to be including journalism. News media is part of this. But most importantly, I do not want to be a political pundit. I do not want to put my politics into this because there's no reason to put any politics in this. This is an objective discussion. Now, with that said, I want to get into a story from CGR and Joel Simon, who writes, "For big tech, what follows free expression?" Since the goal of any social media company is to have as much user-generated stuff as possible, and since monitoring content and deciding what to take down is both expensive and controversial, embracing free speech was always good for the bottom line. It also allowed companies to stay out of the political fray by making the case that their hands-off approach aligned with an essential American value. And that's exactly what we enjoyed Twitter, Facebook, and all the other social media for the first part of the decade. When I talk about from 2007 going up to about, I say 2014, 2015, when social media started really hitting its stride. Now, according to this story from Joel Simon, free expression is no longer the guiding principle as big tech. And this is where I talk about this. When things are good and corporatization comes into play, with ulterior motives, outside sources, the way they want to go ahead and continue to make money. Because remember, at the time that a Twitter or a Facebook, how much money were they making off of advertising and other things, right? They were still kind of working on a deficit and trying to make money. And at that time, those platforms were doing so well, but everybody wanted to go and continue to invest in them. But then they got shareholders, then they became IPOs, then they started getting more shareholders in, and then corporatization started coming in. And now most of the social media is definitely compromised. And also you have a lot of companies that are consolidating, just like the corporatization, the deregulation that we have in traditional media. Social media has the same thing when you see what Facebook's done by grabbing onto WhatsApp and Instagram, or what Microsoft's doing by picking up LinkedIn, among other things. And of course, the consolidation of other news aggregators and things like that. There's all that going on. Well, we know about the Senate Commerce Committee hearing that big tech had Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg, Sundar Pichai of Twitter, Facebook, and Google, respectively. They were compelled in the most politicized and polarized environment to explain their company's content moderation policies. Regardless of what one thinks of each company's individual policies and specific decisions, what was clear was that the companies are removing, labeling, and downgrading huge amounts of content based on their own rules as they interpret them. As a result, there may be less disinformation, harassment, and other forms of unwanted online speech on their sites. But it also means the tech companies are exactly where they did not want to be, mired in a partisan battle in the aftermath of a brutal United States election, in which information and misinformation may still decide the outcome. So they go back and talk about the censorship issue. Daniel O'Brien, the director of strategy at the AFF, Electronic Frontier Foundation, explained it researching a book on new forms of censorship. 1996, the framework was codified into law when Congress tucked in the Communications and Decency Act, a provision known as Section 230, again, protects social media companies from liability when they publish or host content produced by others. Now, as the internet became unitary global, internet utopians believed the free and unfettered internet could liberate the world from tyranny. Governments around the world had other ideas. China wanted political censorship and made acquiesce part of the cost of entry into the market. Governments in the Muslim world wanted to suppress blasphemy and mockery of their religious beliefs. Turkey wanted companies to turn over data so they could track, arrest, and prosecute coup plotters and political dissidents. Europeans, welcoming a broad range of speech, wanted to remove hate speech and derogatory content while also protecting privacy, for example, the right to be forgotten. So more people started getting into what they wanted to make the social media that they had in their particular market. So that was being controlled by certain countries, but now it's being done by the platforms themselves. Now, the weeks preceding the election that just happened, there was a fierce debate about decisions by Twitter and Facebook to limit the circulation of a controversial New York Post article purportedly based on leaked Hunter Biden emails. And some have suggested the companies exercise a responsible role that limited the circulation of misinformation. Others called the decision a scandal and an affront to the First Amendment. Regardless of what you think about this, one thing that can be said is no one is saying anything about if the information that was acquired was accurate or not. I don't care about what people want to go and say about what they want to say about it, but the truth is, people said it was unverified without any attempt to verify it. Does that make sense? Regardless of which side you come down on, the companies are in an impossible position because the most important source of information is no longer a rogue state or a terrorist organization. The companies are compelled to make judgments and navigate between Democrats who want the companies to exercise greater controls on content and the Republicans who have weaponized information. So Big Tech, he's saying, should articulate a framework that accurately describes their new model. The companies to continue to say that they are guided by free expression principles does not cut it, given how much control they are exercising over content. The new goal should be to create an online information environment that serves the public interest and should welcome a political and public debate as to how the public interest is defined. Yeah. But the thing is, more important than anything else, I think Twitter, Facebook, and other social media platforms need to specifically, more importantly, they need to clarify and granulate their terms and conditions, their terms of service. They're vague. They don't say enough. And there is no clear-cut policy that highlights violations, highlights reasons for suspensions or terminations or anything like that. If people knew what the rules are, the law of the land, either people adhere to them or they don't. It's pretty simple. It's not like it can't be done. I see online dating sites that there's certain kind of content they do not allow when people are communicating with other people. And what do? They cancel people out. They remove them. They delete them. This is not hard. So they're saying about the creation of a new political culture capable of managing complex debates. Without that, information will continue to be weaponized. Social media companies will continue to be both participants and pawns in a never-ending political battle for which we all suffer. I skipped through some of this because obviously there was some opinions that were being brought in here, and I didn't want to be the one that's putting those opinions out because they're not my opinions. That's the opinion of Joel Simon, but I'm going to link the story on the description here to the show so you can go ahead and check it out for yourself. What I think is even a more interesting subject, but I thought given the election, given the big tech censorship that's going on now, that's being talked about, whether you're on the side of supporting the censorship or you're not, this is another story that was before the election that I thought was also very compelling and really interesting in the whole sense of media. So Stephen Van Bellingham, he had a post on customerthink.com. The post is how the media industry is creating an offer you can't refuse. Let's dig in. Stephen says the media industry has been under a lot of pressure the last few years, especially the more traditional players like newspapers, radio, and broadcast TV. Competition comes from pretty much every direction. Company media like blogs and podcasts, influencers, social media aggregators, streaming services, and many more. And to that, add to that the changing needs of the consumers, especially the younger generations, addicted to personalization and instant gratification. And it's clear that this is an industry that needs to build an offer you can't refuse. That's the name of a new book that he actually entitled. So there are many digital endeavors that media industry players have already made to ensure that the audience journey becomes smoother and more frictionless. And he sees two important trends surfacing that will disrupt the more traditional players if they do not get on board. And two of them is extreme personalization and centralization. Now, in this, he talked about having content that's especially for you. So he brings up a couple of apps, one from ByteDance, the people that own or did own TikTok, Tweetao, which is a Chinese platform, and AI filters in there to create personalization. And there are examples that are personalization we have right now. Netflix is one great example, always offering great personalized suggestions. And Spotify does the same thing, taking the listener's decisions out of the equation, making lists for them, and thus leading them to what they should listen to. The other part, they said, is making the experience for media users faster and a lot easier, centralizing it as much as possible in one easy interface. That's what's happening now. You're having a lot of people that are trying to go ahead and make it so they don't have to go to multiple different places to find their content. That's what it again is trying to go ahead and do what cable or, having a television does. You have to have the device, a way to go ahead and put everything so you can go ahead and watch on different platforms, which is why the idea of what the iPhone created with the App Store and then Google after that with Google Play, that's what created things. Because then we started seeing things where it all changed. We were starting to see all the different things you could put onto a phone or a device, and you could just flip to an app and you go to it. And then the same thing goes for the other platforms out there. You have things like Amazon Fire, which you can get Hulu, Netflix, and YouTube, or Roku, or often the case in the more traditional media, large ecosystems. The latter offers unlimited articles for all its newspapers if customers are subscribed to one through their topic service. One is a company called BP Media that does that. Also, the other important area is where media players need to make their mark is the life journey of their audience. How can they solve their frustrations? What gives them energy? What are their hopes and dreams? Offering the ultimate convenience and saving the customer's time no longer suffices for brands that want to stand out or even survive in the long run. Then he goes into the news as well, fighting misinformation. So there is now the infodemic, he calls it, the virus of fake news, deep fakes, and other types of misinformation, increasing mistrust and polarization. Educating the public about bias and fact-checking is part of the solution. The other approach he talks about is making use of blockchain to allow users to verify content and to control the integrity and origin of any piece of content, no matter its dimension or extension. And that could contribute to the enhancing of the user's experience and restoring the public's trust in news media. That's some of the thoughts he has in here. And it's interesting. That's what the digital disruption is doing right now. That's what I got from it. Again, he's talking about personalization and instant gratification. Again, we have short attention spans. We want to be able to get to what we want to do for the content as quickly as we can and get to it all in one place. That's what is the mission of the digital disruption right now. And this is where I think all the streaming services, for one, They're all going to try to find their way to get themselves into one spot. And this is why it's important for, say, like devices like Amazon Fire or Roku to have those music apps available on there. So that you have all of your entertainment in one place, all your information in one place. And the only thing that's not on there is your text, is your actual information that you read. But you can watch all your information. You can read all your information online, and it takes care of a lot of different things. And it does it better than what most traditional media can do these days. But this doesn't mean there's not room for traditional media anyway. There is. But they have to find their lane, and they have failed to do that. Instead, they're doing things like laying people off. I saw what ESPN's laying off 500 employees, going for a more digital approach. That's where more of their focus is at. Same thing going for, other companies. They want to go ahead and downsize, or they want to go ahead and make changes so they can focus more on their digital division as opposed to their traditional divisions. It's the way of the world of business, my friends. I guess the most important thing we have to see is where advertising fits in all this. Because the advertisers are going to still want to try to get their products in front of people's faces. So how will they be able to do that if everybody's stuck behind subscriptions? It's a very good question. And that's something that has not been answered yet. But then again, will product placement be put into play? Will there be other things that have to be done? The evolution of advertising in order to support all this content is going to be a question that has not been answered yet. But that's not for this program. That's for other people to figure out. Let a marketing program figure that out. I got one more story I wanted to bring up that I saw a couple days ago that I thought would be good to go and bring up just real quickly. When we talk about pay for play, or we talk about what's being done, there's now, as an apparent pay for influence tool, discovery mode on Spotify. So this past Monday, they revealed they would test a new controversial new tool called Discovery Mode, allowing artists and record labels to influence the song selected by its algorithm for personalized recommendations. It works by letting a label or artist identify a track that they want prioritized. With that track, then is played in listeners' personalized autoplay or radio feeds. The announcement suggesting that artists can be paid less per stream for their tracks to be played in personalized feeds could not have come at a worse time for Spotify in terms of reputation among the wider artist community. Because then there was an open letter that was issued by the Union of Musicians and Allied Workers demanding better payment, claiming the streaming platform encourages labels, quote, and management companies to pay for plays on the platform. The practice amounts to payola. It is unacceptable and must be stopped. So Discovery Mode immediately drew criticism from artist David Lowery, for example, suggests this is a form of payola or sponsored social media post. It is not necessarily illegal, but the tracks would need to be labeled. So is Discovery a form of payola or merely a way to give artists a say in how their music is discovered? So there are three things you should know about this. Spotify already drives 16 billion artist discoveries every month. And it says that artists should get a say in what fans are discovering. So Spotify's 320 million monthly users will hear an artist they have never heard before on Spotify. And that Spotify is actively refining its algorithms to enable even more fan discoveries of new artists each month. When speaking to Music Business Worldwide, who reported this story here, Spotify product marketing lead Charlton Lamb said, quote, "We want to speak to artists all the time, and they tell us they want more opportunities to connect with their fans, even outside of release week, especially with their catalog music," end quote. He also said that all these signals, quote, create a bespoke listening experience for each and every fan. Our algorithms are focused, they're accurate, but recommending music shouldn't just be about what our algorithm thinks you want to listen to. With this tool, we're going to make artists a bigger part of recommendation. The second part they're saying is going to cost artists and labels in royalties, but they could see positive ROI. So Discovery Mode will not require any upfront budget, and instead labels and rights holders will need to agree to being paid a lower recording royalty rate, for songs flagged to be played in personalized sessions. The reason for that was because the company, quote, wanted to make sure that the tool is accessible to artists of any size at any stage of the career. We're looking for a model, he says, that would be more accessible, democratic, and fair, so we're not going to ask any artists to spend any cash. The third part is it's experimenting with radio and autoplay, but can expand to other areas of Spotify. So they will carefully test expanding to other personalized areas. And this is where listeners are really interested in discovery. He says those are the places listeners are going to. They want to hear music that sounds like the stuff that they like, but only different, and that's where we're driving a lot of that activity. We thought it would be a really good place for us to start increasing the chances of that kind of discovery happening. They're saying they're starting with just a few key partners right now, but as have we done with our other tools, it's our intention to make every artist available and label available so that when we do this, we'll do it as soon as we are able to do so responsibly. Well, this is subjected to some corruptibility if they're not doing this right. We have to see if they're going to actually be open to any artists to get themselves put into discovery mode. But the question is, are artists going to take a cut in their royalties just to get noticed more? Well, somebody's going to break from that pack, and we're going to wait and find out who it is that becomes possible to be found. Will it be a new thing besides TikTok? Will it be a new place to find viral artists? We already know that Spotify is a great place for people to go to find new music, and they do. And they discover new music all the time. And it's obvious that Spotify does that as well. Who's to say they're today's top hits, which is one of the playlists I listen to the most. It's one of the most followed and subscribed to playlists. Could they start putting songs in there as discovery mode? They're already curating songs that are going to go up there anyway, and they might be influenced as to which songs go up there in the first place. But we'd like a little more transparency, I guess. And I think the musicians are looking for that as well. All right, time for me to move along into my feature interview time. Again, I have been speaking with Muyinza Kasirye, Black media producer, artist, entrepreneur, and owner of APRT Media. Again, he runs a media production company that does photography and videography primarily in the entertainment space, working coast to coast between Los Angeles, New York City, and Boston. This part of the interview, we were talking about the issues of diversity, equity, inclusion in media in terms of what the studios and the decision makers are saying and what they're doing about things and what should be done. And that's just what I talk about with Muyinza here in part 3, my final part of my featured interview with Muyinza Kasirye right here on the Broadcasters Podcast. Recently, there was a video episode of Variety's Rebooting the Entertainment Industry series. And this is what's being said in the room that we've learned about. We don't know what everything's being said, but what they said us in public. This is what I have a problem with. Now, Verna Myers, she's Netflix's Vice President of Inclusion Strategy. She said this, quote, "Allyship has been one of the most helpful shifts in bringing about diversity, equity, and inclusion. When people get busy becoming an ally, they discover all sorts of powerful things, and they become part of the solution." How do you take that statement?
I think that is absolutely true. They don't I'll be very real with you. One of the most untapped resources is the African American mind, the Black mind in the entire world. It is the most untapped resource because very little has been poured into it. But by pouring into it, you can create equity that didn't exist before due to the fact that you're taking for lack of better words, I'm going to say exploitation, but because I can't think of the word.
Right.
But you're exploiting a resource you've never exploited before. And so you're going to bring about something that has never existed. There are so many fantastic ideas in our community that can't come out because, again, we don't have the resources, we don't have the connections, we don't have the information to practically bring them about. But if you are inclusive and you and allies from communities are able to come to the Black community and say, hey, what do you all need? What capital do you all need? Who are your leaders so that we can invest in them so that they can invest in you all, in your community? That is absolutely the way to change. For instance, I myself, I am a leader in my community. I am someone that creates for my community. I not only created my opportunity, I am creating opportunity for my community through my work, through who I am, through conversations like this. And so if anyone wants to help our community, it's the allyship and really investing in our leaders and trying to find ones of us that are capable of taking advantage of the opportunities that are held by a lot of white-owned entities, companies, services, different things. And so I absolutely agree. And I can tell you from a business standpoint, it's the best thing any business can do. If you look in places you've never looked, you will find what you've never had. And that's what companies that are realizing the superpower that we possess. You know what I mean? Like, they're really understanding it.
It still comes down to the idea is there's a glass ceiling. Because I always believe when you talk about exploitation, I was thinking right away, I was thinking of the 70s and blaxploitation films. So allowing certain black art, talent to go ahead and be in movies and to be noticed. But again, all controlled by the movie studios, predominantly white. But then, of course, we've seen progress going along, especially from the 80s to now. I think there's been a lot of progress made. I really do believe there is. But the problem is the ceiling is still there. It happens to women. It happens to ethnicities and other minorities altogether. Minorities all across the board are always going to get that glass ceiling, and it's hard to break and chip away at that. I think there's been some chipping away at that, but again, that's the biggest problem I see here. Now, I want to get back into this Rebooting the Industry series article. They mentioned this as well. Many of the panelists expressed the importance of considering intersectionality when bringing about change for the better. One of the people here identifies himself as Black, Asian American, and part of the LGBTQ plus community. He said it was important to support other groups toward their march for equality, rather than limiting the scope to just personally affects those who look or identify like you do. Also went on to say, we, quote, as underrepresented communities feel like it's a zero-sum game at some points. We're fighting over one sliver of the pie, that we're not fighting over the whole pie. And I think this is a moment where we have to say there's a larger pie, and we're going to ask for that piece of that pie. So if for this moment Black Lives Matter is taking the priority, that will help lift all boats at some point. So we're doing this interview. We're 4 months after the George Floyd murder and the Black Lives Matter movement having a really resurgence back to mainstream prominence, in a lot of coverage. Now, talk to me about the progress that you feel has been made as a result of this extended news cycle. This is where I came again, where if it's performative allyship or are we actually seeing real progress? Maybe it hadn't happened in media entertainment, but do you see it where there has been progress made as a result?
I think some progress has been made. I think most of that progress has been in the minds of people, but I haven't seen a lot of tangible change. Because the thing is that when you're talking about an issue as systemic as what we're talking about, it's something that's going to realistically take. If it took hundreds of years to do, it's going to take hundreds of years to unravel. You know what I mean? It's not something that's going to change overnight.
But now I'm trying to see what they've actually been doing.
Hopeful,
right?
What we're actually doing. Well, what's actually happening is, so this is the information age. More people are becoming aware, and after awareness becomes action. So more people are becoming aware, and the action has been the protests. And so after protests will hopefully come change.
But here's
How long
the question,
that change will take,
forgive me for jumping in.
No,
a lot of money was being brought in. There was a lot of donations from all these corporations to help contribute to the cause. Is that money even making it anywhere? Because that's what I always ask myself. Is it only going to political causes, or is it actually going into the communities that are underserved?
Yeah, and that's kind of the issue as well, is that that's the other issue as well, is that A lot of these places, I'm sure, mean well. A lot of the organizations, I'm sure, mean well, and a lot of them do a lot to help. But it really shouldn't be on the people in those organizations to do it. It should be on the government. The government is supposed to look out for the citizens of the country. We as Black people are citizens. Why do we pay taxes and yet we're murdered 2.5% by the same individuals said to serve and protect us, but instead they're murdering us at 2.5 times the rate? And again, I pay taxes towards those people.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? So it's like, there are certain things that just, shouldn't be happening, but it's going to take time. It's going to take time.
Right.
And the government is really the one that should be footing the bill and doing something about it, because the people are just citizens. We're citizens. The government is supposed to.
But now the new allies that have been. But here's the thing, Muyinza. Because of the new allies that have been brought to light now, again, there's been some that has been very performative and has been stupid. One of the things that was the biggest example was Blackout Tuesday. Remember the Instagram icons, everybody going black. I don't understand what that did at all. I don't know if you participated in that, because there was a lot of music artists that did. Yeah. So they didn't take the room to message. Instead, they inadvertently shut themselves off from communicating at an important time.
Right. Yeah,
I don't understand that.
There's when tragic things happen, people try to find ways to react and to show their pain and show their hurt, and that was a way. It was an attempt to bring awareness, and yes, it was. You can say, as far as the effectiveness, you can say what you want. You can say what you say about the effectiveness of it.
Yeah.
But that was the point. The point was to bring attention to, hey, because you're talking about it, so it did kind of work. But
I just wish they would have done something with it. It's a missed opportunity.
You're talking about it, so I don't think it is 100%. But if I would say that there is, and again, there just needs to be, it's not on the people. You know what I mean? It's not on us. It's on, quite honestly, white people, and it's on the government, because that's what we can do. Blackout Tuesday is what we can do. That's the amount of power that we have. They have everything else. They have the real resources. They have the real information. They have all of that stuff. Blackout Tuesday is what we can do. You know what I mean? And so,
hey,
and that's the thing,
right?
That's the issue. Like, literally, that's the issue. Is that's the power. That's the power dynamic. Is Blackout Tuesday is what we're capable of and what we can do.
I really do appreciate you've been taking some heavy hitter questions. I have thrown some loaded questions at you, and I really appreciate where your take is on this. I really do, and I can say that it really does. It means a lot, because obviously, like I said, your background, your experience, and what you've individually you've experienced. It means this conversation. I wish a whole lot of people will get their ears on and realize where we're going with this here, because I think we're getting this is pushing the needle forward. I really do.
Absolutely. No. It's conversations like this that do, because we have to understand each other. We have to understand each other's perspective and just see where each other's coming from openly. If we can do that, we can have a little more empathy for each other and be able to find ways to help each other, rather than just, be against each other. We're all in this together. We're all in the same country. We're all in the same room.
Don't say we're all in this together. That sounds like the pandemic advertising I'm so tired of, man. Oh my God. Stay locked in. Zoom calls. No, that's it.
No, but think about it, right? Like real talk, this is a country, right? It's basically, and if you look at it, well, this is a house. Mm-hmm. This is a house. We're all in it, right? We can either hate each other, be mad all the time, treat each other like garbage, do all that stuff. Or we could be like, hey, man, make sure the living room's clean. Make sure you don't leave your stuff by the steps. Make sure you treat everybody with respect. Make sure you da-da-da. And we can have a happy home. You know what I mean? If we all are just understanding, deal with each other, like really hear each other out and try to do the best for each other.
I always think of it like
get
it's a
to
village.
place
I always think of it like it's a village kind of mentality too.
Yeah,
Where you just have everybody's trying to do their own responsible thing and, look after each other, which I wish it wasn't a perfect world that we can all go kumbaya, but unfortunately this is real life. It sucks.
Right.
Now, back to this, rebooting the entertainment industry. Back to this one more thing in the series. I thought this article was really good. Recent years, they said, have seen sizable shifts in how companies view diversity. Having diverse staff used to be a token idea that very few organizations strove for, but executives are starting to realize it's no longer an option, but more of a requirement. So here's just to bring to your point about what should be done. Blair H. Taylor is a PwC or a PricewaterhouseCoopers partner for people in organization and co-lead of diversity and inclusion. He said this, quote, I think there's an awakening and it's slow. It hasn't necessarily penetrated every company, but companies are awakening to the fact that we're living through a different era. And I think that's a very important distinction. What do you think about the fact that when you hear something like that there is a slow awakening?
I think that is what's happening. And you can see it start to, because the way that it's dripping into, particularly media, is happening in a very drip fashion. I remember a few years ago, there was, this is on the media. I actually won't use that example because it's on the presentation side, but I think that, well, actually, I will use that example. So Cheerios a few years ago released a commercial in which there was a biracial child and the husband was Black and the wife was white. And it made the news. And this was just a few years ago. This made the news. That's how big of a deal it was. And the thing is that might seem like nothing, but it goes along with what I said before. If you want people to feel like they're involved in what's happening, they have to see themselves. And people are now getting to the point where they don't want to support things that don't do that. Like they don't want to Uber people. I have so many friends that have dropped using many a service due to a company's political leanings or a statement that came out or something that leaked about what their diversity or their lack of diversity and things like that. People are caring about this, and now it's beginning to affect bottom lines. And I think the fact that it's beginning to affect bottom lines is the thing that is really going to make companies hit the gas on it, because you're literally missing out on money. If you hire me and you have no Black people on your team, you're going to get a slew of ideas that your team has never had before. Because again, perspective dictates that I am coming from a completely different point of view than everyone else on the team. Thusly, my ideas are going to be a lot different. By the same token, if I'm also seeing myself in the media if I'm seeing myself in the media of a company, that makes me more apt to also support that company. Now, I think we're seeing the effects of kicking the can up out of the racial issues in this country, that being one.
One of the areas I don't see enough of, because obviously we've talked pretty much about the idea of where the representation that of diversity, equity, inclusion come in when it comes to music, movies, and television in the same light. Mm-hmm. I haven't been to talk about, and this is where I come from. When it comes to the injustices, I'm a radio guy. I worked, 25 years in radio, off and on. And, I always think about the fact that, there's always been some representation and a lot of ownership in radio in every major city in the country. A lot. And so there had to be a reason why certain artists were able to go ahead and make themselves prominent in every different market they were in. And it's very important. I just think that there's not enough being done, because if radio is in such a bad spot right now, because when you talk about yourself just before about how there's money being lost, there's money left on the table. Radio is the one place you can go with that. Terrestrial radio is in dire need of help. All these homogenized, corporatized stations are shit. I am tired of it. And why there's no diversity in radio, especially when it comes to black people in radio. Listen, I appreciate the Tom Joyners of the world and what they brought to the business. But again, it's something to be said about the people that come in here and they put in the work. You know the reason why they call him the fly jock? Because he literally, at one point, he used to fly from Chicago to Dallas on a private plane to go to both of his shows to do his show every day. That's the kind of work that guy put in. I respect the fuck out of Tom Joyner because he was great. And unfortunately, he's retired. But again, it's those kind of voices like that come on board. And it's like, there's not enough of that. And I still feel like, when it comes to black-owned radio stations, they program themselves so well. They're the most best performing stations in some markets. I mean, in Miami, Hot 105 has been a mainstay #1 station. And the people that have been there, they are community-based and focused. They let you know what's going on, exactly what's going on, employment opportunities, things that are important to the community. They give a shit. I want more of that going on, is to come into radio. So one of the things I want to bring up, which is very important, I thought this day might be important for the people as they listen. Hopefully we'll catch this before it's too late. There's a coalition of public media workers. So public radio, National Public Radio. They're calling for a specific day, November 10th, to serve as a way to highlight the need to take action when it comes to diversity. The National Federation of Community Broadcasters said there have been too many public leaders defending systemic problems or reflecting criticism at those who complain, which is leading for the call to action. Ernesto Aguilar, program director for the NFCB, he says, quote, "It felt like time to say it's not just you, and remind those concerned about the need for public media's evolution. When it comes to messaging, why do you think radio isn't looked at more as a priority platform for diverse voices as has been for decades?" That's where I'm coming from, Muyinza.
That's interesting. Yes. Well, it's funny you say that. So the radio space is actually, we're now evolving into the podcast space. So I guess
because I want, podcasting, absolutely, do a rampage in there because there's a lot of black-owned podcasts that are on right now. But again, but the problem is that that's great podcasting. There's a lot of great talent there. Hell, that's what I follow along with anyway. I support the community. But what I want, I came from terrestrial radio first, and I have a love for radio because it was great. It's gone right now. So why isn't the money being put into these radio stations? Have them be local owned. Let there be more black owned stations and make it available because those have as much or as more influence in communities than anything national.
Yeah, I would say that is a sliding scale. So radio is dying a very slow death, as is TV, due to the fact that most people don't listen to the radio.
But you can. You realize the ratings?
You can, but they don't.
No, but hold on.
But they don't.
Do you realize how much of the black community does still listen to terrestrial radio? They do. It's still an audience. So tap into that. That's why I'm saying more stations. That's what I want.
Yes. So yes, so let's look at a company called iHeart Media, right?
Yep.
So
I worked for them.
iHeart Media. So there you go. So iHeart Media a few years ago actually destroyed public radio. Or local radio. So I used to live in Boston. In Boston, there was a show called Jammin' 94.5. It was like, what was the guy's name? Can't remember the guy's name, but it was two people hosting the morning show. And then one day I turned on the radio station and it is a syndicated radio show from New York. And I say, this is weird. What happened? Turns out that iHeartMedia had gone on a purchasing spree to purchase a bunch of small local radio stations, a lot of them being Black and urban radio stations, in order to essentially house them under one big unit.
Oh, I see it. So it's Ramiro Torres and Sante Deoleo.
Yes, that was the one. Yes. So they and Robin, and there was another host, Robin,
right,
and Ashley, and so they next to that, whatever. And so this is the thing. I absolutely do agree. However, it's the same struggle. It's just we don't have the resources to go up against the iHeartMedia, to go up against some of these bigger broadcast companies that are white owned and but in their structure are mainly white. And so that is really why we've taken to the podcast space, because the podcast space is the space where we can actually have control. It's essentially new radio. We're very good at controlling culture. That's what we do. We're very good at running, creating, and making culture. And so in the podcast space, and if you look at people like Charlemagne the God, who just started his Black Effect podcast network, actually with partnering with iHeart Media, he has a slew of Black podcasts ranging ranging from industries of politics, technology, just pop culture in general, news, just all of these Black voices that he's amplifying. So I do agree. Yes, I absolutely agree. And I think that revolution is already happening, but it's happening in not the radio space, I think the podcast space.
There was a time where, but there were a lot of stations, just going back a couple of years ago, they did plant flags and did establish prominent stations that had, that represented the best of Black stations in the iHeart brand, as a matter of fact. KMEL in San Francisco is a great example. Yeah. Chewy Gomez used to run the morning show there. Now it's Big Vaughn. Still has a foothold, and they really do represent the community, even in such a corporate space. I also think of, well, at least it's a Cox-owned station for Hot 105, but them in 99 Jams, you have James T. and Jerry Russian have been running things down there for 3 decades or more. It's been crazy. And I think of the same thing with you talking about New York, Hot 97. Look, Charlemagne the God, or right now at Power 105, rather, running that Breakfast Club. That's prominent and getting their own network with Revolt. Like, there's something to be said where, and this is where I come from as well. This is why I bring this up. All the great MCs, all the great voices from a lot of different spaces, you think about the fact that they all came from radio. Like Steve Harvey had a radio background. You look at, Tom Joyner, radio background. When you look at, I think at Don Cornelius, damn it, he was also entrenched into radio as well, getting themselves into the space. My thing is that radio catapults everything.
Yeah.
And that's what can be done here. There's a place to go, but radio, as in a corporate sense, needs to implode, and that's the one place we could wait for, because that's the vulnerable spot. You got iHeartRadio, even after bankruptcy, still $6 billion in debt. Cumulus, $1 billion in debt. Entercom, all these other companies. That's where the pressure should be put on. I don't know why the pressure's not there. Because because here's the thing. Then you have the pipeline to get everybody in.
Yes, but it's a resource game. It only comes down to a resource game. It's just when you're fighting that battle at that level.
But if you can break them up, you can do it. That's what I always think. And I think that can be done.
Or yes, you could do that. Or like you said earlier, you could make your own thing. And the podcast is the way for us to do that, because the radio is a system. So this is the way America works. America is a big white system. It was built that way, and it functions that way. And you can see according to how things work, right? So everything is made for white. So radio is a white institution. It is. We're in it, but it is a white institution. And so if by attempting to take over that, or to, I guess, change that, we're fighting against the white system. But with podcasts, because it's new, we're in a completely new space. It's essentially the same reason why I've been able to be successful, because what I entered into in the digital media, social media space, it wasn't a system yet. So I was able to thrive in a system that didn't have a color or a structure yet, because I was the structure. I was part of the base of it. And so that's what we're trying to do with podcasting. If we can come in early enough, we can control that thing of the future. I mean, we control streaming. We took over streaming. If you look at the top 50 in every country, it's all Black people. It's all Black artists. So
hold on. There are a lot of reggaeton artists that are up there as well. Don't knock them out.
Yes, there are. And, Post Malone and Ariana Grande, they're up there too, but there are a lot of Black artists on there.
And actually, I wish there was more. I wish there was more converging as well. You know, like Cardi B working with J Balvin and Bad Bunny, or Travis Scott working with Rosalia. I love that kind of shit. I love the mixing, the blending of cultures. I don't want separate lanes. I want, like you said, diversity. It should converge.
Yes, it should converge, but we also need to.
Well, there's got to be lanes and the separate lanes, but there should be a mix of both.
Yeah, I agree. I think together we create more. Together we create more, but everybody has to have something in order to bring something, and just everybody needs more. That's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. When I look at this whole time that we've had this discussion, not just today, but just since the death of George Floyd, the one thing I think that stands out that I think made the most significant difference for me was Little Baby's song, The Bigger Picture. Because there used to be protest songs, Edwin Starr, and just you'd have songs and music that would actually represent what happened and would actually almost give like a time capsule of what was happening at that time.
Yeah,
I want to just take a couple of lyrics from it, because here it is. It's bigger than black and white. It's a problem with the whole way of life. It can't change overnight, but we got to start somewhere. And I hope we've gotten the chance to. Might as well gonna head start here. I agree with that, and that's where we are.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is the way. It's these conversations, these tough, you know what I mean, butting of heads that we get to where we're trying to go. Because,
I mean, there's a thing about the pressure being put on, but then again, it's like people, overall, the overall society, they have to understand the message. And it's got to be, it's just like anything with mainstream society, you have to make it absorbable in a way that people can understand. But that's why I'm always saying that song right there will always let me know, okay, that's what it's all about. Probably one of the best ways I thought about how it came from. And, maybe respect him as an artist that he actually would go. It wasn't even political, but just it was a message. And remember, I mean, with rap music, we used to have all political messaging. When you think about Chuck D, when you think about KRS-One, that's what we had. Diggable Planets, they all had that. Where did that go?
I mean, Grandmaster Flash,
right? Where did that go?
Yeah, I would. The messaging, I would agree. I mean, who just put out? Who was it? Quality Control just put out a really, really great album of. No, it was Empire. Sorry, Empire just put out an album called Music of Change. That is, they got all of their artists and just had them write, put together records that can help us right now. Those same kind of empowerment records, and so they're out there. And our artists are doing the work. Definitely, for sure. It's out there.
And if those songs can get played on the radio, that's my point. I always feel like music is a pipeline to that always. Because again, in podcasting, you're stuck to the copyrights of what music you play. Gotcha. But radio, the music can get out to more people and hopefully build streaming and other things. So, I mean, for your own sake, for what you do at APRT Media, I hope radio would still be something that you could still try to use as a route. And, here's the other thing too, just because, artists like Leo the Kind, they don't need to be, pigeonholed into alternative. They could be on a station that might be urban, or that's still called urban contemporary, but it's really a black owned station. Like that should be the case. I want diversity in the music altogether. I don't want anybody to be stuck in a lane. And that's why I want the mainstream to represent everybody. That's where I come from. But anyway, before we wrap things up, you got a number of artists you're featuring on the website, aprtmedia.com. APRT Media. You have everything when it comes to photography, videography. Talk to people when they go to the website, what they can learn about more, and how they can follow you and what you're doing.
Yes. So if you are in the California, Nevada, or Arizona area and are in need of photography, videography services, we provide those. If you are international and necessitate marketing, as most of it is digital, we are definitely able of handling that. You can head to our website and reach out to us there. You can also reach out to me personally at just Instagram at Muyinza, just my name, Muyinza. You can also follow us on Instagram, APRT Media, APRT Media, just like that. Please also, if you are anyone that has any ability, all the way up from the CEO of a company that is considering where you're going to order your next pen supply, or if you are just a normal person just going to get food at a restaurant, please take a few extra minutes and try to find a Black-owned business, service provider, food service, anything. It would help out our community immensely. Support our leaders, because our leaders will help our community. Helping our community is what will help the country. So that is what I would say.
And also, I want to make mention too. I saw the section on the studio, the songwriting and production section on the website. Yes. I love how you put the equipment out there and you have everything set, and you're offering all that there. Because honestly, like, there should be some people that are now. Is this something where when you're booking calls, do you have the capability to do virtual, or can you like take voices and get them recorded and sent to you to produce?
Yeah, we do actually. It's funny you say that. So we do a lot of virtual sessions, actually. So we do songwriting production virtually. We can get things done. Luckily, the internet is a beautiful thing. So most songs actually don't happen in the same room anymore. So
well, I've seen that. Yeah.
Capable. Uh-huh. Yeah. So by the same token, yes, that as well. We're able to get done what you need to get done from a production, writing, songwriting, recording standpoint, if you necessitate any of those services as well.
As a matter of fact, in the UK, and that's the other thing too. I got to make mention of this too.
Yes.
Because when you talk about the music being produced by so many different routes, there's a song called "Times Like These" during about the pandemic that was done by BBC Radio 1 and the Live Lounge All Stars. So all these different artists came together and collaborated. So it's like 30 voices that all recorded their own pieces, whether iPhone or whatever they did, to put the song together. Amazing. It was the number one song over there. The other thing too is that, why is it the UK gets it? Like, if I look over there, you ever listen to what the UK's got when it comes to the grime artists, the Stormzy's, the heady ones, the Dutchavellis, the dance music that they have, it's everything. It's such
much more diverse.
A kaleidoscope. It's so beautiful. Yeah. I love listening to what they're doing over there, and the music gets up there when it's viral. Like, you hear it on the radio, and it's a government-owned station, and they're doing it right. Why can't we get NPR to do that? Damn it.
That's a good question. Hey, that's a good question. It's a very good question.
They get it, man. Other countries get it. I bet you Uganda got it.
I mean, even to be honest, even Canada. Yeah. Radio in Canada I love radio in Canada. When I go to Toronto, I love listening to radio because you get everything. Yeah. You get such a crazy mix of everything. But yeah, I actually would agree with that. Musical diversity in other countries is definitely a lot more extreme than here.
It's just America. It's just America's America.
It's sectored, yeah. It's a young country.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
If you really think about it, America's a teenager. We have bad credit, in debt. You know what I mean? It's just young. It's a young person. Doesn't know what's going on. It's kind of, has a gun pointed at everybody. It's young. It takes time.
Muyinza, we went about 90 minutes, man. I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for being on, and I'm really glad we got to go and talk through this out. I thought we put a lot of stuff out there for people to chew on. I
think so too, and I appreciate you giving me your platform for the few minutes.
Again, I've been here with Black media producer, artist, entrepreneur, and owner of APRT Media, and that's APRTmedia.com. Muyinza Kasirye. Thanks for being on, man.
Awesome, thank you, appreciate it.
And that is a wrap. It's a very good thing that I have these interviews because it is a little bit light on the news front. So to go ahead and put these interviews out with some great people I've gotten to talk to. Let me tell you, I've enjoyed this batch of interviews very much. And not like I don't enjoy all my other interviews, but I feel really good at the type of interviews I'm doing now with some of these guests. And, it's really great people I get to talk to and get to connect with. It's really fun. So I had a good time talking to Muyinza. It really did open my eyes on different couple subjects. You can see that, we were definitely not, there was definitely some things we might feel different on, and that's okay. I think we had a good discourse altogether, and I really appreciated Muyinza's time. We had a lot of time to talk together, and we got through a lot of different topics, a lot of different content. So I really appreciated his time. Again, his website is APRTmedia.com. Check out what he's doing. Very interesting stuff. So with that said, we're going to leave it for another Broadcasters podcast. Come back for another episode next week. And remember, content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast, presented by broadcasterspodcast.com and kingofpodcasts.com. The Broadcasters Podcast is brought to you by kingofpodcasts.com/Amazon. If Amazon is good enough for the King of Podcasts, it most certainly is good for you. kingofpodcasts.com/Amazon. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program. The Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at kingofpodcasts.com.